Well, Craig Counsell is moments away from being introduced as the Cubs' new manager. This is obviously a pretty exciting day for the Chicago Cubs. And you talk about this team and what it took for them to win the World Series, some of the great managers of the past. And the Cubs are paying him to be the great manager of the future. He's Chad Anderson. I'm Mick Gillespie. Thank you for hanging out with us here on the Cubs baseball channel. And if you're a subscriber, hey, we welcome you here. And if you're here for the first time, make sure you like and subscribe. We'll hear from Craig Counsell coming up here in just a second. All right, with Chad Anderson, I'm Mick Gillespie. Let's go to Wrigley Field and let's hear the new Cubs manager. Obviously, we need to get the audio up on this.
Things with his family and his son Max, and I just want to, take this opportunity with the media here to say thank you for everything. He's been an incredible teammate, and he will be sorely missed. So thank you, Jason. I wanted to acknowledge the Ricketts family. I see Tom and back, Laura and Todd. As always, thank you so much for your support in everything that we do. I want to thank Craig's agent, Barry Meister. I know they've been together for, I think, over 30 years. He was incredibly helpful during this process, so thank you very much. I want to acknowledge the Counsell family, Michelle, daughters, Finley and Rowan, his sons, Brady and Jack couldn't be here today, but I want to welcome you guys all to the Cubs community. I couldn't be more excited to have you guys, so thank you. From afar, I've always admired Craig. I know I've admired how he always seemed to get the most out of every team that they had. I admired the cohesiveness and the connectedness of the roster and the clubhouse every single year. I admired how his teams always seemed to play with an intensity that mirrored his own. I admired how he carries himself, how he articulates himself, how he always seems to represent the community and the organization in the best possible light possible. For all those reasons and for so many more, I could not be more excited for this ownership group and this front office to partner with Craig to bring another championship to Chicago and to these great fans. So with that, I just want to announce Craig Counsell in Cubs history. All right, congratulations. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Feels good. Feels good. Thank you. Just first of all, thank you everybody for being here. This is a big day for me. I think it's a big day for the Cubs. It's a big day for my family. And it means a lot that you're all here and some familiar faces already, make my heart feel good for sure. So look, you walk into, Wrigley today, the first day as a Cub, and it already starts to mean something. You walk into the history, you walk into the energy, you walk into a place that you already know it demands your best. And that feeling is just a feeling that I need to have and I love to have. And I love that to be a part of my daily life. And so that feeling exists right now is really, really special for me. And makes me so excited. It really does. It's been an emotional week, no bones about it. Much harder than I imagined. just the speed at which this happened, and 17 years of relationships, that hits you hard. Truthfully, that hits you really hard. The Brewers have meant a lot to me. I have great relationships there. The relationships I have there are the relationships that I am going to try with all of me to build in Chicago. They're what's important about this game. The connection to the people is what makes this thing go. It's the connection to the staff. It's the connection to the players. It's the connection to the fans. And that is the challenge I have ahead of me. It's a big one. It takes time, but it's the one that I have to get right. As you go through this process, there's when you're trying to just figure out life, really, there's self-reflection, and you're kind of trying to figure out what to do. And I think at some point over really a pretty long time span, I just thought that a new challenge was where I had to push myself. And really that's, it's about growth, man. It's about just trying to push yourself to a place that you're not at right now. And that's scary. I'm sitting up here, I'm a little scared. I'm sitting up here, you're a little uncomfortable, but that's how you get to a better place. And that's how you push yourself as a person to a better place, I think. And that's how you create new relationships that are just more impactful. And through this process, that has already happened. And that's another thing that just tells you this is right, man. This is the right thing going on here. And this is something that's really special. So that's been a big part of this for me. From a baseball standpoint, I think I saw quickly that the organization is just in great health. And that Jed presented a very compelling vision of that. It is time to be a Cub, right? There is momentum happening here. And it feels close. And that means there's a really exciting future ahead of us. And now it's my job to be part of taking us to the next level. And that's the plan. All right. Before I take questions, there's just a couple people I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank the Ricketts family just for your commitment to my family and for welcoming my family into your family. Very much appreciate that. Jed and Carter, just your faith in my abilities, and really we're starting a partnership here, and that partnership means the world to me. It's how we get things done. It's how we connect the whole organization. And it's a big part of what happens next. My agent, Barry Meister, we joked that we've been together 30 years. We have not talked this much in the last 30 years as we talked in the last 30 days. Thank you. And then my family, my wife, Michelle, Rowan, and Finley. My boys are hopefully at class in college right now, I'm hoping. But this has been, I talked a little bit about growth. This has been a week of incredible growth for our family. And I so much appreciate how you have pushed me, supported me, just kept me going. And I've learned a lot about you, but most of all, I've felt love this week. And so I thank you for that.
We can turn it open up to questions now. Just please, we have microphones on either side. Just state your name and affiliation before asking your question. Go with Bruce here.
Craig, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce.
For your entire career, you've been known as a winner, and that's a heavy label to put on somebody. But I think you proved that through your career and now as a manager. Can you define what you the word winner and what you look for in a player when you're looking for that particular trait?
Yeah. So, look, I think I don't know if I have the answer. That I don't know if I'm good enough to like get that right all the time. I think, the biggest thing people have to do is we have to figure out, like, you got to have the courage to be yourself. And I think identifying that in people is probably the first thing. There's a selflessness to winning. That's important. There's, can you see the bigger picture? And then, the bond that in sports that teammates create is the most powerful things that sports has going. And that's a bad word, but making sure that you understand how important that word is, teammate, I think goes a long way to producing winners.
We'll do Sahada next.
Hey, Craig, Sahadev Sharma with The Athletic. You've obviously faced the Cubs a ton throughout your career. I'm curious about the 2023 team. What stood out to you when facing them, strengths, how they played in the roster in general?
Yeah, so, I mean, the 2023 Cubs team, had a good season. There's a core to that team. It's 83 wins. And that means that there's things that are close, right? What you have to be careful about is that, what happened last year does not indicate this year. And I think teams are different. I've used this analogy for a long time, but there's a soup made, and it can be the same players, but it's going to taste a little different next year when grandma makes it. You know what I mean? And so it's always a little different, and you have to create a new dynamic every single year, no matter what's going on. And so there'll be players that have had wonderful years last year that are not so much, and vice versa. But there's a solid core and a solid foundation, and that, speaks to the health, I think, of the organization, and that speaks to a bright future.
We can do Dion next.
Hi, Craig. Dion Miller from ABC7. Obviously, Wrigley Field and the Cubs organization sells itself, but you answered a little bit, but can you expand a little more on what Jed's plan sold you on, like what the recipe looks like for making soup here?
Yeah. Hi, Dion. I think, truthfully, Jed's vision was really just of kind of, to me, the health of what we look like going forward. And this process was fast. I don't know that I've joked with Carter already that I don't know much about the Cubs. But I believed in how Jed sold the vision. Absolutely. And that was impactful to me. And, I know enough about the city, the franchise, the history, just baseball in general, that I know how it works, and so the vision that he presented of kind of excitement and where the franchise is at kind of and on a big picture level, we've still got to get a lot of decisions right. You got to get a lot right still, but it's a really healthy place to start.
Okay, we'll do John.
Hey, Craig. John Greenberg from The Athletic. Like you said, this went really quick. What was your reaction to them having interest in you? Because they had a manager. Like, it wasn't like this was a team you could probably have thought about or daydreamed about. So what was your kind of reaction to that? And then that first meeting with Jed, what were the conversations about?
Yeah. So, the Cubs had a manager, and that, really makes you not think about them. The process, my process, dragged on slowly, really. And then, Jed phoned me on November 1st, and we agreed to meet. And it was again, it was really Jed's vision here that sold me. It was a feeling. The meeting was, we were just feeling each other out, to be honest with you. Like, I've never really met Jed, didn't know a ton about him, just kind of the that he's the Cubs, runs the Cubs. So it was a little bit of like, feeling each other out as much as anything, I guess, probably is the best way to say it. You're not really laying everything on the table in a conversation like that. You're feeling each other out. But, at some point, it was a long conversation, and honestly, Jed was aggressive in that conversation.
Matt Zahn, CBS Chicago. Craig, you touched on what makes up a winning player, but what is it about you that makes you a winning manager?
Yeah, again, I won't tell you I completely know the answer to that question. But my responsibility, I always think, is a couple things. I have to be prepared. That's first. I have to have the courage to be myself, because when you put yourself out here in these situations, like, you mess up, you have flaws, you're not going to be perfect. That's okay. And then I have to connect with people, and because that brings out the best in them. And I think that's specifically players, to put them in a position to succeed and put them in the best place to succeed, mentally and as teammates. So those are the three things that I, ask of myself, and try to do. And then there's some let the chips where they fall, that you have to be okay with. So I would say those are the three things.
Andy?
Yeah, hi, Craig. Can you just give me a little more detail about just how the timeline for how things unfolded? You said you got the call November 1st. What happened after that, and how did it go?
Yeah, Jed, I didn't pick up his call. I wasn't. Yeah, that's what first happened, I guess. I called him back, and he indicated that the Cubs had interest. Kind of discussed some generalities of what was going on, just like my schedule and things like that. And I suggested that because I was interested, but cautious, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. But I was interested, and so I suggested schedule. I was going to New York the next day, and the time, my process was getting pretty fast. So then we got together later that day.
Okay, we'll go Tony and Andy from Marquee, and then Maddie.
Hey, Craig. Tony Andracki from Marquee Sports Network. I'm curious, you've managed in the playoffs a bunch. What have you learned about managing in the playoffs, and how different that is to manage a 162-game season?
Yeah, it's different for sure. The 162 games is a marathon, and our game, I think, is rewarded, and decisions you make are rewarded kind of over the marathon. And players, frankly, are rewarded over the marathon. In short playoff series, we have luck in our game, and we have just fortune in our game, and we have you don't control everything in really short stints in this. You control less in really short stints in this game. So it causes, or it forces, aggressiveness on managers, I think. And I think the best thing that, you just have, the mindset you have to take into playoffs is one of aggressiveness. And you still have to trust your players, and you still have to go with, you have to be willing to trust your players and trust your great players, but with an aggressive mindset.
Hey, Craig, Andy Martinez from Marquee Sports Network. I'm curious if you've reached out to any of the current players yet, or have you had any initial conversations with them?
Yeah, I really slowly started this, and frankly need to pick up the pace. But I've, because this has been fast for me, I need to go slow right now just to make sure I get things right. And so that will pick up here as we go. But it's important to me that, those are important conversations, and I want to make sure I get them right. And those introductions are important. There's a coaching staff that we've got to make decisions on. Those are important decisions. But at this point, it's just, for me right now, it's important to go a little bit slower.
We'll go Maddie Lee.
Hi, Craig. Maddie Lee from the Sun-Times. You mentioned Jed really sold you on the vision, but going into this process, what were the top things that you want checked off that were going to affect your decision in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I talk about a little bit like the health of the organization. So just understanding, where Jed thought the Cubs were at in certain areas. It's like the current team, player development, kind of how is the front office built out to equip us and give us good information and make great decisions. And then certainly like financially, where do you feel like where's the space to grow or to continue to, invest in the team. So I think those 4 areas, and I try to keep it. I really think it's my job to see that in from a little bigger level and not get super granular there. And you were always kind of doing this to me, I was always doing this as a manager with organizations and with teams and looking at them. And I was, I thought that the Cubs were in a really good spot. They've obviously had to make some difficult decisions kind of in years past. And that's what's led them to a pretty good place. So it kind of just my conversation with Jed strengthened that belief.
Go Steve Greenberg.
Hi, Craig. Steve Greenberg from the Sun-Times.
Steve.
I've heard, I guess, skepticism, let's say, is in recent years about the impact of a big league manager, how significant it really is, maybe relative to certain other sports, certainly relative to the way it used to be in baseball. So how do you view, the influence, the impact a manager can have, in the most basic way, in the standings? How much of a difference can you make?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's very difficult to quantify. And I think that's why there's been a hard time with it, and understandably so. I think what I've found is that, when I talk about connection, like that's a big word with players, and that's a big word with like uniform staff, obviously, but it's also a big word with what are now much bigger organizations and, people supporting baseball, the team, and that connection and that partnership is really important. And that's how I think that's another way that a manager can really affect what's going on. So we all see the game out there and the results of the game out there, and there's a win and a loss, and we move on. I think there's things happening around that add up over the course of the season. And the manager in today's game, to me, plays a role connecting both of those parties. And if you can do it well, I think there's a place to have a real impact.
Oh, Mike Berman.
Hey, Craig. Mike Berman from NBC here in Chicago. I don't know what your relationship's like with David Russ, but undoubtedly you cross paths as players and as managers. What are the emotions like getting this job in the manner that it happened? And has there been any contact with David since?
Yeah, I mean, look, David is a very good man. David texted me probably before the news broke here. And I called him back immediately. We had what I think is a very good conversation. That gave me, I've always had great respect for David. That gave me the ultimate respect for David, the way he handled the conversation. So this is part of this business is really difficult and it's really cutthroat. And as a player, I've lived it. David's lived it. Every player lives it every day. But I respect the heck out of David Ross.
We'll go Matt Spiegel in the center.
Hey, Craig, Matt Spiegel from 670 The Score. Jed was talking the other day about his excitement of how you view the chair of manager. So in terms of the partnership, wondering what realms of what they do you're excited to bring what you've learned through the years, whether it's bullpen or whether it's strategic or scouting. What realms are you excited to bring your knowledge to?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I think, I've been with one organization, and I have kind of experience into how one organization, puts it together and builds a roster. I'm like barely into another organization. But it's different, right? And it's different. And so, certainly one of my hopes is that I can provide some, new thoughts and new ideas about how to just improve a process possibly, or a new way to just think about how we manage the roster during the season. And those are little things. But I do believe that, I've had this philosophy, just like stack little good decisions on top of each other. Just keep stacking a good decision on top of each other. And then you wake up one day and you're sitting in a pretty good place. And all those good decisions have kind of formed a backbone of your organization. And you're sitting in a very, very strong place. So getting the little things right and those little decisions right, and just keep getting that next. That's it adds up over time, and that's when you wake up one day and your organization's in an incredibly strong place.
Do Megan.
Hey, Craig, Megan Monmere with the Chicago Tribune. When you look at the mark of successful organizations year over year, you look at player development and being able to integrate that at the major league level. What do you view kind of your role as a manager in that? And what do you feel like are some of the keys to be able to build those successful years?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. I think certainly the biggest thing is that the major leagues is it's a hard league, and it's just player development does not stop when it gets to the big leagues. And I think that's often the hardest thing to learn. And after you go through cycles of players, you start to learn how hard the transition is to the major leagues for players. The norm is a massive struggle. That's the norm. And I think if you come at it from that place, the problem is that expectations for those players are on the other side of the spectrum. And that's a hard thing for everybody to balance, right? It's a hard thing for the manager trying to win a game to balance. It's a hard thing for the fans to balance. It's a hard thing for all the player development staff that have worked so hard to help get a player. And then most of all, it's hard for the player. That's the hardest thing for the player. So I think trying to create some like empathy there with that and some understanding with that for the players and just for the group, all of us, is probably the most important thing to do. And the goal of that is to just so that the player gets in a better place and the player doesn't have so much on his chest kind of coming to the park every day and knowing he has to do everything for everybody, because that's what he feels like. And so it's a process for those players. And I think it's essentially one of time and support to get them to a good place.
Sully.
Hey, Craig, Paul Sullivan, Chicago Tribune. Just the money, the highest paid manager in baseball. Does that put more pressure on you to win immediately and win big? Or do you feel like it's just part of the gig that you were in the right place at the right time?
Well, there's pressure in this job, man. I mean, that there should be. And I accept that and welcome it, and I think it should be there. So I don't think, regardless of what's going on salary wise, like, look, there's a financial component to this. Obviously there is. But my job's to win baseball games no matter what. And I wish, I wish, unfortunately, your competitiveness does not allow you to just behave differently. You just can't, that's just what you do. You go in a dugout and your job is to win a baseball game. Doesn't matter who your team is. That's kind of how I see what I do. Doesn't matter what's around you, but once the game starts, your job is to win a baseball game. And you keep it that simple. There's no reason to get past that. And I think if you start complicating it, you get yourself into trouble.
Hey, Craig, Kurt Hogue, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel here. Just curious, as someone who spent so much time in Milwaukee, 17 years as a player, and then from there before that, just wondering, like, as you're going throughout this process, was there a mental hurdle at all of like, considering going to the other side now? How did you sort of view that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see it like that. I maybe underestimated that part of it, frankly. I was looking at it maybe as from a challenge perspective, from a growth perspective. I understand that point of it. Certainly respect that point of it. But I guess that's where tough decisions you end up with tough decisions because of things like that. And it's always those life decisions like this are certainly challenging. But after you go through you end up in the right side.
We'll do Jesse.
Hey, Craig. The way the system is set up is I wonder if Milwaukee had more resources, you'd still be there. Like, was that part of it, coming to a place that just simply has more resources because of the market they're in?
Yeah, I mean, look, the challenge of this is different, and that challenge excites me. More resources means like different types of players for sure. That's a different challenge for a manager. So I don't know if I think more resources is certainly something Chicago offers, and there's no question about that. It's part of the equation. It's part of, I think how you kind of tackle the problem of being a great baseball team and being a great franchise. There are also other things that excite you, like this place, is just, you can't help but get excited about it. The brand that the Chicago Cubs are, like, can't help but get excited about representing that. So, I think that it's just more than, to say it's payroll is just, that's probably simplifying a little bit on my end.
A little back corner.
Adam McCalvey, MLB.com.
Hi, Adam.
You went into this year in a unique spot for a manager with a total blank slate with different options, including maybe taking a break. Can you tell us how your thinking just on the big picture evolved over the course of the year? And at what point, if you can think in the timeline, you decided, yeah, I definitely want to manage and I'm open to managing in a different place?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably had for your latter question, like those thoughts over the last 2 years. I've thought about it, thought about what's next, thought about a new challenge, how this year evolved. I think my thinking has always been like, look, you make, and I think Jed would tell you the same thing, like, give yourself time to make decisions. And so I chose the path that I just wanted to give myself as much time to see where life had me. Where's life going to you're sitting there in April or March in spring training, and you're in one place in life, and in October, and you're in a different place in life. And I wanted to give myself time to be in that place, to kind of see what was in front of me. see what was going on with my family, and give myself time to make a decision that I thought was best for all of us.
Steve Greenberg.
When people give the kind of thumbnail of your resume, your postseason record comes up, right? Having gotten to the World Series as a manager or won it. The reason I want to ask this is because you went into the job not having coached or managed before, especially early. Did you feel like any of that was on you, that it was maybe different than what you expected, or that you didn't do something well enough? And over the course of your years, the time you got in Milwaukee, how much better did you get?
At the postseason?
Well, the better part, overall.
Oh, okay. So I think, look, it's interesting. Managing is, I think the first thing you learn, and what I've always said is like the courage to be yourself is the first thing you learn about managing. It's really the first thing you need to learn about it. It's not the strategy of the game. It's not when to take the starter out. It's do you have the courage to be yourself throughout this process? It's what you learn first. And I think, there's sometimes early in your careers, there's a fearlessness to how you do things, which is a good thing, right? Young, crazy, there's that fearlessness that we all used to have. Some of you still have, hopefully. But that, and then as you get older, you experience and like kind of reps of events in managing, whether that be conversations with players, whether that be game situations, whether that be front office interactions, then they start to guide you a little bit more, because those reps, those kind of, that really help you form kind of gut decisions are really important to you. So that's how I think you improve. And so you try to have this blend of like, don't lose that fearlessness, but your gut is better because of all those reps that you've had. And hopefully that's what I think makes you a little better at the job and keeps you growing. And then the other thing is like, this is why I'm here, because you have to challenge yourself to get to the next place. I believe that you have to create a challenge for yourself to get to the next place. And that's part of this for me, is like to get better.
We'll go Jordan Bastian, then Ryan Herrera, then Cheryl Ray, and then we'll wrap up.
Hey, Craig, Jordan Bastian, MLB.com. What facet of the vision kind of most excited you, whether it was the integration of young players into the big leagues, whether it's the potential for big off seasons, kind of what part of the vision were you most excited about?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. So there's a lot of choices of how to do it. And that's exciting, that there's several ways to attack the problem. It offers the ability for Jed to be very creative and use any one of those means to do so. And in the end, it's going to be some blend of all that gets it done. But it's almost like he's got a lot of ways to do that. And I think that gives him a really good chance at being right at this and this being successful.
We'll go Ryan, then we'll wrap with Cheryl Ray.
Hi, Craig. Ryan Herrera, CHGO. You mentioned having not really known Jed prior to you meeting, and Jed has mentioned being like appreciating you from afar. Now that you guys have met and have obviously signed here now, what excites you about that partnership going forward with Jed and Carter, and how you are now involved in executing that plan?
Yeah, look, it's always, there's what's fun about this is that there's like a workplace dynamic, right? And you start to learn personalities, and you start to learn how to communicate with each other and how to get things done, how to push a button sometimes, right? Like, cause that's what you need to do. And so, yeah, I've got my early read on that kind of like in my head. And that's helpful, man. That's how we're going to communicate together. And that's how we make progress. And that's how, like, I push Jed and he pushes me, and Carter pushes me. And so that's the fun part about this, kind of getting to know each other, feel each other out, test each other. That's awesome, man. I love that part of it. And because in these early conversations, you learn so much, and you learn so much about each other. And you find places where you can make each other better. And I think that's a big part about, I think, what Jed would tell you about what this partnership is about, is how we can make each other better. And it's a part you look forward to.
Cheryl Ray Stout with WBEZ Radio. You touched a little bit about the coaching staff, but have you talked to any of the present coaches on the Cubs staff? And could you announce any retention of these coaches or somebody from the Brewers too?
No, at this point, I'm still working through that process, and I think, like I said, I'd reiterate, it's a place that I want to go slow at right now. It's a place I want to be deliberate, because it's important, and I just need to do more homework is the best way to say it. I hadn't done homework on the Cubs. I wasn't prepared. So it's a place where I'm behind. And I think making a quicker decision is a mistake in this situation.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, everyone. We can break down into small groups.
All right. We just heard him, Craig Counsell, becoming the new Cubs manager. Thank you guys for hanging out with us here on the Cubs baseball channel. We're sponsored by the Tennessee Smokies team store, right? Smokies baseball won their first championship in 45 years. I'm in the team store right now. Chad, look at this.
I know. I'm a little jealous of the backdrop, man. Oh, look at you. Look at you.
$10. These are $10. Everybody needs those for their Cubs tree, right? And I've actually put. I'm going to get one of those championship hoodies right there. But you guys can do the same thing. There's also a Mick Gillespie T-shirt in here too. I'm going to have to grab one of those.
Don't you have a bobblehead?
I don't have one of those.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay.
No. That who knows? Maybe one day. But let's talk about him. The new manager, 56th manager in Cubs baseball history. Chad Anderson and Mick Gillespie here. Chad, your thoughts on Craig Counsell? This wasn't the Joe Madden press conference. Not a whole lot of, I don't want to say charisma. He just seemed like he was a little bit more restrained than Joe's like, let's go get a beer and a shot, which I loved, right?
Yeah, Joe was ready to go back to the RV and shoot some fireball or something or some Patron, and do a car bomb with you or something. But
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, Craig, this is also a completely different personality,
Yeah.
When Joe came in, he was coming in and had the knack and the history of working with almost like a 4A instead of a AAA, like what I call a 4A team, because that's what the Tampa Bay Rays were at that time. But they made the World Series. They had a lot of success under Madden. But remember, the Rays were always that team that you just look around and you're like, damn, how do they keep producing players? And how do they keep having such great talent? And Madden had that knack and that reputation of bringing the personalities together and working with the young guys and making it a fun clubhouse and the whole thing. I think with Counsell, I don't know Craig at all other than just the Brewers, right? And watching him on TV and whatnot. Counsell doesn't strike me as that guy, though. He is more business-like, methodical, but he's not a jerk about it, or he doesn't feel like it. I think he's very well respected. I think his players like him, but he's just going to be more of a fundamentalist and a perfectionist. And hey, we need to work on getting things right than he is, and he's much more methodical. Than he's going to be like, hey, everybody, dress up as your favorite Mario Kart character because we're getting on a plane, in an hour.
Right.
And so that's what
Here's
I think,
Yoshi.
Craig. Yeah, like here's Yoshi, here's Wario. That's
Right.
my 2 cents on it. But he's gonna get things done the correct way and the right way. And you could just tell, like, he was careful with his words. There wasn't a whole lot of personality in his press conference. Not that that's a bad thing. He was just very straight laced. And he mentioned multiple times, I want to take things slow. As fast as things went, I want to be slow and make sure I make the right decision. So you can just he dropped a lot of nuggets and hints in there that kind of describes who he is. Very like intentional and methodical in how he treats his position.
Yeah. I love the question about the staff. He's not ready to talk about that. You're going to have to bring some people over from your staff. You know, you've seen Andy Green has interviewed for some major league bench coach jobs. If his bench coach doesn't get the job, I'm imagining you got to bring that guy. That's your strategy partner when you're in the dugout, and you want to have someone in that spot that knows you, that knows the way you think, and that you trust. Nothing against Andy Green, but I'm guessing that would be an area where you would look and say, hey, you know what, maybe we find another spot for you, or maybe we just say, hey, you know, thank you, and bring in someone else there. If that's me, if I'm managing, I want my own bench coach. Now, pitching coach Tommy Hodavy's done a really good job there.
Yeah.
I don't know what his relationship is with Hodavy, or, you know, his pitching coach from Milwaukee or somebody else, but I'd think really long and hard about letting Hodavy go.
Yeah, I like Hodavy. I also thought it was interesting. To be honest, I was very surprised. I really don't know, and he didn't lead on to it about how deep his relationship is with David Ross, other than they managed against each other, obviously, in the National League Central for 4 years. But I just thought it was interesting, and it defines once again what we've said about Rossi, and that he's a great human. And Rossi reached out to Counsell, who then immediately called him. So Rossi reached out, I think he said via text. Counsell called him immediately, and they had a great conversation, he said. And so, you know, talking about the coaches, just the one that's obviously no longer a Cub, I thought that said a lot about both guys. You know, that they had some communication and had a chat, talk things over. It wasn't this awkward, like silence from a distance kind of thing. But, you know, going back to the coaches too, John Malley, you know, is he now going to stick around, or is Counsell, you know, is that going to be like the shortest, he's officially the hitting coach, I believe.
I don't think he's the hitting coach. He's on the big league staff right now. So hopefully he stays. I think a lot of these guys are under contract too for more than just this year. So they've got to go through that. I'm sure they're going to say, okay, you know, who do you definitely have to have, and who can you know, who on the staff do you feel comfortable with? And, you know, and a lot of times in the major leagues, that's what happens. You when you have a change like this, look at Bruce Bochy. You know, Mike Maddox was the pitching coach for a long time there, and he stayed the pitching coach. You know, so it's not like you got to come in, and it's not like football hires in college in the NFL where you come in and then you got to sweep everybody out. You got to have your own team. Some of these guys go back a long way, even though they're on different teams, or some guys are under contract, and you can just tell, you know, hey, I'm here to make sure that everything goes the way that it needs to go. I want to see this team win. And I think that's important too. It's who he feels comfortable with on his staff. And that's going to be interesting to see. Plus, and I know a lot of you guys want to know, Chad, and you're probably thinking the same thing too, is, you know, how's he going to influence what the Cubs do in the free agent market? I mean, at the end of the day, it's Jed Hoyer who's going to make the decision. Carter Hawkins, you know, those guys are going to decide, right? You see the Cubs name continue to come up with Shohei Ohtani. We've had great debates on the Cubs baseball channel about Ohtani and what he would bring. I don't think the Cubs would get tied down and hamstrung with the contract, because I think he's going to make a lot of that money back up in merchandise sales. I think with the Cubs marketing, it's a mega brand compared to what the Angels ran into. So, and I got this gut feeling that Ohtani's really going to have a tough decision between the Cubs and the Dodgers. I just think, like, I'm with Vegas. I feel like that's a possibility, but how does he fit into this? You know, do you think he's going to be like, hey, you know, it'd be great to have him, or let's go this direction? Or is that even a conversation that the manager has these days?
He does. He has to. I just can't imagine that Craig Counsell decides to come over and comes over without some sort of confirmation or validation that, hey, I'm going to be able to have a say in all the moves that the Cubs are expected to make in this offseason. I mean, from a free agency perspective to a trade perspective, people also have to look at when the Cubs are trying to put some of these players in on the roster and whatnot with Otani and then Bellinger and Yamamoto and Alonso and Soto, and just sounds like anybody that ends with an O. With the Cubs doing that, some of these guys, they're like in two different buckets. Some of them are dollars. Like Otani, that's $1. You got to pay the dollar. Soto is a prospect guy. Alonso is a prospect guy. You got to figure out, and so that's why I think too, you're going to see when we've been talking about this, and that's probably what's allowed the Cubs to become big favorites, or not favorites, but second in the list there behind the Dodgers, to get somebody like an Otani, is because they can work it from both angles. A lot of times teams get stuck where all they can do is buy a team, or they may be a lower payroll team, like a small market, a Kansas City, a Tampa, a Milwaukee. All you got is your prospects that you develop, and then you got to trade to get the bigger guys or the bigger players to come over and so forth. And so the Cubs are in a great position because they can attack from both fronts. They can sign free agents and they can trade prospects. So it's going to be active, but I cannot imagine Counsell sitting at Wrigley Field today without knowing that he's going to get, maybe it's not the final say, but a heavy say in what happens in the offseason.
We're talking about the Craig Counsell press conference. You guys that have been here with us watched it, and you can make a decision on what you thought. And, we're talking about that right now. What question did they not ask? And you guys can throw it up in the comment section that you would have liked them to ask Craig Counsell. I guess I would have been direct and said, do you envision the Cubs winning the World Series? And threw it out there to him, because I was waiting for that soundbite where he's like, hey, we're here to win the World Series. Instead of, hey, it's tough. This is a tough league. It's a tough league. But I love the fact that Joe Madden was like, hey, we're here to win now, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but I felt like when I left that press conference that he was saying to everyone, we're going to win the World Series. Craig, obviously different personality, more buttoned up, more thought out, maybe than Joe. I love Joe. I like Craig. I'm excited to see what he does, but I didn't get that moment in this press conference.
Yeah, he didn't necessarily say it that way, and I know what you're meaning. Like, he didn't confidently come out and say this is the expectation. He did mention that this job, this team, this organization, his salary, all these things are pressure related, and he understands the pressure. He understands the expectation, and he understands what the players and the fans and the front office all want. But no, you're right. He did not come out and just forcefully say World Series or bust in the next 5 years during my contract. Obviously, he's here to win the World Series, and that's always the ultimate goal. But you're right. There was no definitive, confident, this is what's going to happen. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, no doubt. So was there anything that you wanted him to ask that he didn't?
I'm glad that somebody did ask him about the coaches. I'm glad that David Ross actually came up. I was kind of curious about that. As well. The one thing I would have liked them to ask, Donnie and his crumble cookie.
Yeah,
I've seen that
comments.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're great. The one thing
shots at me. I don't care.
the one thing I would have liked to ask is, what does he see and how does he envision, and what's his thought on young players and playing time?
Oh yeah, great.
That was something that we gave Ross a lot of grief about at the end of the year in late September and October. Gave him a lot of grief. And so I think that's, for me, hey, what do you think? Cubs are loaded with the farm system, a top 4 in the major leagues. How do those guys fit in? And what's your thought on getting those guys into the lineup as quick as possible?
Yeah, right. I'll tell you, the biggest surprise to me in the whole thing, and you brought it up, was that Dave Ross sent him a text. What a classy guy, man.
Yeah.
I've always liked him. It doesn't surprise me. He does everything the right way. Do you think, and I've had some people around the business, guys that I would consider executives in baseball, have had pretty high talent, pretty high positions, have said to me that that doing this is doing it the wrong way. You know, when you have a manager and then you hire another guy and fire your manager, like the way that the Cubs have done this now twice. Do you feel that way? Like maybe this, if you know, that this hurts the credibility of Jed Hoyer, Theo Epstein type guys for doing this, not letting, not firing the manager and your manager, like it's to some people, they feel like it's unethical.
Yeah, but we've talked about this on this channel on other shows. I actually love this about Jed Hoyer because when you step back and look, this is a business.
Right.
And I don't know, guys. I mean, if we're sitting here as we're not the ones paying it, but as a fan base,
right,
we ultimately contribute as fans to salaries because we're buying merchandise or we're subscribing to networks or we're going to games, buying hot dogs, the beer. Everybody jokes, oh my God, the beers are going to be $12 now. Maybe they already are. Maybe the Goose Island is already $12.
Right.
But things always go up. And we're somewhat contributing to that. And so what would you rather have? Would you rather have an 83-79 season, but you had a manager that you like and he's a good guy and we appreciate the effort and the hustle, or Craig Counsell comes along, Joe Madden comes along,
right,
and you say, hey, unfortunately, it's a business. No matter what business you're in, no matter whether it's baseball, whether it's real estate, selling cars, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Whatever business you're in, if somebody's not cutting it and they've had opportunities and a better option comes along, 9.7 times out of 10, it's more about the results and hey, like this is a business first. And
right.
so I'm okay with it. I don't think they did anything dirty. They just saw an opportunity to improve the organization.
Let's look at this. Jim says, I think the writers were more upset about the managerial change than the fans. I think you're right. I mean, think about all of the different writers that I have come on the show here and talked to, guys I've known for a long time. None of them at all had any idea. Like when I'm asking them, I mean, think about who we had on here. Pat Mooney from the Athletic came on. We talked with Tony Andracki. We've talked to a ton of guys, and everyone was kind of like all in the David Ross camp. And I just kept saying, I mean, when you lose like that at the end of the year, when you collapse, I mean, you have to put the manager and their decisions when you end up 2 games out or a game back as one of the reasons why you didn't get to where you wanted to get to. And it was because you guys on the channel, you kept saying that, and you were right, and I said from the beginning, you're going to earn your keep as a manager when you're in a playoff race. You have a big lead, and then you get in or you don't get in.
Yeah,
I think that's why we're here today. And Jim, I think you bring up a great point.
Jim, thanks for the kudos on my bat too. He back here.
Hey, let me show you guys. Let me show you guys this, by the way, since I'm in here right now. I'm gonna put these headsets down. This is some of the gear that you get that we have. Since they do sponsor the channel, look at that right there. Championship.
That's a sweet hoodie.
45 years it took to get that right there.
That's a sweet one. So I'm not a big cold weather guy. I hate the cold, to be honest. I'd rather it be 105 than 32. But at the same time, look at
that Hollywood Pete shirt.
PCA,
right
yeah.
Get them while they last. And then there it is right there.
So you don't have a bobblehead, but you got a T-shirt.
I don't have a bobblehead, but I do have a T-shirt.
I do love some hoodie season though. You can't go wrong with a really solid hoodie or a long sleeve T-shirt.
They got a lot of Cubs stuff in here too. So,
hey Mick, Johnny wants an Ohtani jersey in there. Can you grab one?
When Ohtani signs, we'll get one. But there's like a whole wall of Cubs stuff in here too. And every time I'm in this place, I'm like, man, I need that, and I need that, and I need that. I've got like a little pile started over here. So
Jim's got a good comment. I never thought about this. The Counsell short sleeve hoodie. like the Bill Belichick. It's like
Yeah.
the Bill Belichick hoodie, right? I love
right,
those.
right,
Yeah,
right,
that's
right.
a good one.
For you guys that like collect like game used stuff, they have like game used jerseys and stuff in here too. Like Pete Crow Armstrong, Hollywood Pete, PCA, he's going to be a star.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun to watch him. Owen Casey, who was the Cubs, what was it, like minor league hitter of the year? Got some of
Yeah.
his stuff too. But there's a lot of young guys that are coming up through here right now that that have gear in this place. So, all right. Any final thoughts? Thank all of you guys for hanging in and the funny comments.
No, it's exciting though. It was a ruthless decision, but credit to Jed Hoyer. One thing I was surprised to finish up, Jed was the one that supposedly initiated this.
Right.
We talked about that and said, did Counsell's agent reach out and just kick a tire before he signed
Yeah.
somewhere else or took the gig or whatever? Counsell said that Jed called him and he didn't answer.
Right.
But
Who
ignored him.
answers? Who answers a number you don't know?
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
true.
you know what I mean? Like, it's
Probably
like,
calling about his car warranty.
yeah, like, right, exactly.
But no, I thought that was interesting. Hoyer called him, and you could tell that this was a target because that to me, I wish they would have asked Jed that one. When did you decide to call Counsell?
Right.
Because Jed called him on November 1st, which was the first day you could call without tampering. And you don't wake up November 1st if you're Jed and go, you know what? I'm going to call Craig today, see what he's up to. Like,
right.
that was thought out for a week or two or longer before he made that call.
Remember, Jed said that he was hoping that he didn't sign before that. Like he wasn't sure if there was going to be an announcement. And I wonder through back channels if someone kind of tipped him off, like, hey, wait until, or his agent probably was like, you know what, wait until November 1st before you sign that deal with the Mets, or Cleveland or whoever, and let's see what happens.
Also interesting, Jed seemed to allude to he's wanted Counsell for a while.
Mhm.
That was interesting. And then how about Counsell saying 2 years ago, he started thinking to himself, what's the next challenge? What does the future look like? Like,
Yeah.
he didn't think about it in the last 3 weeks. 2 years ago, before he was going to be a free agent, he said that. I thought that was kind of interesting also.
Yeah, that is interesting. Man, that's crazy. I just can't wait to see what the next part of this is. Like
winter
it just-
meetings in 3 weeks. So
yeah, right.
it's
All
gonna
right.
be nuts.
All right, Chad. Well, thanks, man. Great job. Awesome hanging out with all you guys as well. Appreciate the folks in the Smokies team store here in Tennessee for bringing us in. 45 years they waited for a championship, but one of the best team stores in the minors. You can go online, smokiesbaseball.teamstore, and pick up some gear in time for Christmas, Hanukkah, however you celebrate, or just for yourself. He's Chad Anderson. I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. If you're not already part of the channel, like and subscribe. Go Cubs.